Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Would more innovation help your business? Today, Helene Cahen will show us how to fire up the innovation process. Helene, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Bill, for inviting me to be a guest on your show.
Now,
I'm very excited.
You have a wonderful book. We talked about it before the show, Fire Up Innovation. And I know from going through it, you said this book is intended to help people by doing, not just reading it. So the people who really want to see results and get things going, like fixing their car, this is the book for them, right?
Yes, it could be fixing your car, or you'll be solving bigger problems. They're all important. And some of the thinking is actually the same.
One of the things that right off the bat in your book, and as soon as I read this, we've been on like 36 years now. I think you're the first person who said that they have a degree in creativity and change leadership. Can you tell us about that? Because to me, that's unique.
Yes, I actually have a Master of Science in Creativity and Change Leadership from Buffalo State University. And what I did as I studied is really studying creativity as a science and understanding the theories of creativity, how it can be applied, how you can prove that creativity can be trained and have a difference, how you can facilitate the process. And so everything around creativity. It was a very interesting journey that moved my business to where I am today, which is as I'm an innovation strategist right now and use all those skills.
I think it's terrific. And what I particularly liked about your book, about every 10 or 15 pages, I guess it's at the end of each chapter, you have kind of a little questionnaire for us that makes us think, and it worked for me, let's put it that way. I think at the end of the first chapter, you have, my biggest challenge right now is, and then the next subsection, I feel stuck. I wish I had a magic wand that would do what? So I could feel how. And just those questions, all of a sudden, it put me in a new zone of thinking. I guess that's your intention because you're the expert, but it really works. And it got me thinking of problems in a totally different way and certainly a much better mindset.
And it's only chapter 1.
And it's only, exactly. What about most of us? We keep thinking of the creative person. They're usually a little absent-minded. They have one green sock and one yellow one. And they're probably either studying creative writing or art. Is that just a belief that we all have, or television has pushed our way?
Yes, because it's the narrow definition of creativity, which is a certain type of people. The artists are the creative, and we are not. The reality is we are actually all creative. If you ask 7 years old or 5-year-old, they all raise their hands. Yes, I'm creative. By the time you ask a 7 or 8, you have maybe 3/4. And by the time we ask a group of 30 years old, if you're lucky, if you have half of them raising their hand, is because of the belief that creativity has to be in a certain way. And what I want to challenge is we are all creative because we are human, because we're solving problems in our life, in our work, in our communities, and that is being creative. The real question is not, are we creative? Because the answer is yes. The real question is, how are you creative? And there's different form of creativity, and we apply it to different problems. But we are all creative. And then the last thing that is really important is, actually, you can learn to be more creative. And this is actually why I'm doing those practices in the book, because I can talk to you about creativity, about innovation. It's like, so what? But if you start doing the practices, if you reflect how you can push yourself, how you can learn things, how you can change your habits, then you can suddenly realize, yes, I am creative. I have those skills. I just need to nourish them and practice them.
And I think you've given us the nourishing, I'm going to call them quizzes, but it's just a short questionnaire after each chapter, etc. And to me, it really did the trick, and it made the book that much more interesting. One of the big terms in the book, and of course we've heard it today, is diversity. And if I read correctly, diverse teams perform better, faster, and have a better effect on the bottom line. Can you tell us about that and why that's so?
Yes, because we are solving complex problems. And I would say in the world that we are right now, everything's going faster. The changes are going really fast. So the problem has multi-aspect of it. And the solution also needs to have multi-aspect of it. So if we're just in a room with people like us, with the same background, the same age, the same technical skills, then we're just going to solve it with some biases that are built in our own experiences. And by bringing a very diverse team at all levels, experience, job, where you were raised, life experience, the traditional, diversity and inclusion. And also an aspect that I talk a lot in my book is diversity of thinking. Because we solve problem, but we need people that think about solving problem differently. So we get different aspect of it. And the solution, which also need to apply to diverse people, is going to be more likely to be relevant.
Again, I'm going to repeat what I said before because this impressed me a lot, that diverse teams are found to perform better, faster, and for a business person, they literally affect the bottom line, which is the big thing we all want, the stock to go up, the price of the item to go down, to be more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. So by using a diverse team, and when you say diverse, is that by nationalistic background, age, sex?
Everything. It's all of the above. Because if you only have a diverse age, you're only dealing with some aspect of it. If you only have diverse skills, you're missing, but we all kind of raised in the same neighborhood, went to the same schools. We're also missing something. If we only have, so I believe in multi-diversity, as diverse as it can be. To be honest, it's going to be harder. It's easier to work with people like us, but the outcome is not going to be as good because the solution is going to have built-in biases, which is normal. We only see the world through our own eyes. And so by having different perspectives, then you might have solutions that are broader and kind of avoid those biases as much as possible.
You know, we always hear from the salespeople on the show that they look for items to connect with. If the client or the person coming to see them is a baseball fan or a golfer, or if they like to play outdoor sports, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, it's so different because here we want someone who is different from us because the idea will be, as the word implies, creative, and much more so, and it will apply to peoples of different ages, different outlooks, sexual orientation, and backgrounds and cultures. So the more I got into your book, the more I'm saying this does make a lot of sense. It's not just the gibberish we think we might be hearing. This really works. And again, it comes out on the bottom line. I read about something called 2D, as in David, diversity. What is that?
It's opposite to multi-level of diversity. It's like we only look at, okay, I'm just going to have my team with different function. That's the only thing I'm going to look. Or I'm just going to look at diversity and inclusion, which is really important, but that's still one dimension of diversity. Or I'm only going to look at, just have people with different level of experiences. And I really want to be 3D, 7D, all dimension diversity, which I really think is important. And it's harder. It's harder because even when we hire people, we have biases to point to your salesperson. You want people that we can connect. So we have all this thing. We went to the same school. We're going to the same game, or kids, whatever. And that's easy. As human, it's easier to connect. But to solve problems, that's not necessarily the people that you want. You don't want necessarily to solve problems with your friends. We want to solve problems with a team that's going to really bring those perspectives.
Is there, when you're looking for someone, is there a test or some type of questionnaire that you can give them that makes your job easier in hiring them, at least to say, okay, maybe some of us are below average on creativity, some of us are average, but there's got to be some people out there who are really good. They just see the world totally different. And of course, that would lead to new products, new ideas, new marketing concepts. So is there like a test that you give them?
I wouldn't want to do a test. Because it would be, once again, putting people in a certain box. But I think once you have when you're creating your team internally, then you really want to see how I can be sure that I have different people. It's just not a bunch of engineers that I want in my team. I also want the marketing person. I also want the person that's been hired for 6 months versus the person that been there 25 years. I want the person that was born and raised in a different country, in a different environment. I want the person that lives in different type of communities. That's what I want. The thing is, the person that you think traditionally super creative might be a person that have a lot of ideas, which is really important, but that's not the other thing. In an innovation process, having a lot of ideas is important at a certain stage, but there is a lot of other skills that need to happen. Let me just back up maybe a tiny bit about the innovation process to help people understand. When you create something new, because innovation is basically about change, there's 4 things that needs to happen. First, you really have to understand the problem you need to tackle and be sure you're working on the right problem. The second thing you have to do is to come up with ideas and options. The third thing you have to do is pick those ideas, develop them into solution, prototype, test them, evaluate them. And then the last thing you have to do is you have to actually implement the solutions. And so if you think about those four aspects of the process, then you can see that creativity is different if I'm talking about bringing in the room somebody that really is good at analysis and insight and going to really be sure they ask all those questions to solve the problem. And also have in the room the people that are great at taking an idea and making it happen and implementing it. And so you would want people that are great at all of those. And so there is not one dimension that you want. Again, it's multiple dimensions.
Helene, before we go further, I'd like to let our audience know if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Helene Cahen. It's spelled C-A-H-E-N, pronounced Cahen. Her book is Fire Up Innovation. And Helene, we're going to ask you, is there a website where we can get more information?
Yes, my website is www.fireupinnovation.com.
Now, one, I'm going to say hard question that came to me, or I'm going to make a problem, but I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking this. With artificial intelligence, do we need to be creative? Don't we just plug in a computer, think of a new way to fix my car or cure cancer or grow hair, and it'll happen?
I'm going to give you an answer, and it will change because everything's changing. So my answer for today is I think that the human are important on both ends. I have a friend that calls it the sandwich theory. So you have to start with the human. What question do you want to ask the AI? How are you going to frame it? And then you can have options and ideas or insight or information from the market or thing like that. But then, or even ideas for something. But then what do you do with those? And I think the decision making is still really important that us human are making the decision. Because there is things that we know that the AI don't know. There is biases also in the AI. So so I think at this point, while AI is great to give you background information, to give you data, to potentially give you ideas, it's not so good at how do we decide which is more important, how do we prioritize, how do we make those decisions. It might change in 5 years or 2 years.
Yeah, the way things are going, it might change tomorrow, any day, any time. Now, you used a word that I'm very interested in, bias. How does that affect the creativity process? At first, you would think that's not a word that would even enter, and I was kind of surprised when I first read it in your book. And then again, you're very clear, and you explain it very simply without going into chapters and chapters. How would that affect someone who's trying to enhance their business, etc.?
Because it might be missing some dimension of the challenge because they will not see it, or their style of thinking will bias how they look at it. So remember the 4 steps that we talk about: asking a lot of questions, understanding the problem, coming up with ideating, developing those ideas, and implementing them. If you and I work together, and my style, there's a test for that. It's called the Foresight instrument, which actually measure that not only individually, but you can also map the team. And that's a really helpful tool. So if my preference is to ask a lot of questions and really understand the problem, and your preference is to get things done, there is biases here. My bias is I'm going to really want to dig and be sure I have everything right and spend a lot of time and maybe go nowhere. And new bias that you might just run and try something and really haven't been sure that it's even the right problem, or you look at more than one idea to solve it, or that you even got feedback from anybody else before you make it run. So those are normal biases. Those are biases in the way that we naturally think. Obviously, that's where you can build tools and training so we don't do those shortcuts. Oh, it's the same thing. If I'm raised in France and I see things a certain way, and you raised in the US, and I'm going to naturally go to solution based on my culture, my French culture. Or if I go on food, I might have different things I'm going to think about, nuances I'm going to think about. So understanding it's normal that we have biases, but if we have different people, they're going to challenge what we said. We'll take it as a truth, and then take it as this is just an assumption. And this is another way to look at it.
And of course, that's something that almost slides, I would say, under our view because it's just natural. If you're a Met fan, you're going to be talking in favor of the Met baseball team. And if you're a basketball fan, you're going to be talking at a totally different sport, basketball. And maybe you're into checkers or playing poker, which is, again, something that's totally different. Are the schools getting any better in conveying this and helping with creativity? Is there anything they're doing, or do you see any developments moving in that direction?
Yeah, I think some of the schools are trying. Often it's just maybe one class that is offered. I coach at the High School of Business, and there is a class that they used to coach called problem solving, where we're trying to teach students actually like take a problem and find solution, and how do you work through the process. So the school are doing it, but it tends to be like one class. It's not the core of everything. And I would argue that in a world that's changing so fast, the hard skills are going to evolve. AI is going to take over a lot of the things, but the skills of thinking also going to be taken over to some extent, but really asking the question, kind of thinking about the process, thinking about how we can collaborate together. I think that's going to be really important skills. And I think it should be taught even in, middle school and high school, and do team projects. Also, you look at the school system, we work individually, but in the workplace and in community, we're not going to solve problems individually. We work as a team. And yet that's not something that is really valued in education.
And in fact, I noticed, and I made a comment in my notes about this, that you said kind of the one thing we shouldn't do, if you tell someone they're not creative, basically they shut down. It's like telling someone you're not good in sports, so they're not even going to try baseball or football or hockey. And even if they just had a minimal skill or some learning life lessons, not to be a pro, they're not even going to go in that direction. So am I correct by saying perhaps as parents and watching children grow up and relatives, the worst thing we can do is kind of tell them, oh, you're not creative or you're not good, don't even, just more or less dismiss their ideas?
Yes, I think it's really important for kids, as a parent, is kind of supporting people to explore. And what if they're not good at it? So what? If they have fun playing baseball and they're 7 years old and they have a blast, well, they might not be competing in college, but who cares? And I think that's one of the bias in the US for sports, is actually that we put kids really often in a box about, you are good at this sport, and we push you maybe too much too early, or you're not good, and by 7 years old or 8 years old, like, no, you can't play basketball because you never. And I think it's because a lot of it is, there's a lot of things that you learn. You don't have to be excellent to learn some of the skills, or to learn the thinking, or actually to feel like so good because you do something that is not easy and natural. And if I may, I took one of the challenge a year and a half ago. I was doing a leadership program, and they asked us to do opposite practices. And I'm like, what can I do that is very different? And I was like, well, let's rephrase the question, is that what is terrifying me the most? And what I've always been scared of is singing, because I always thought, and I was always told that I cannot sing in pitch, that I cannot sing. And I had a lot of, trauma about this. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to start singing. And I've been taking singing lesson for a year and a half. And at the beginning, I thought like I couldn't do it. Then I learned that actually I can hear really well. I just didn't know how to make the sound. So I've been learning to make sounds, very simple, just humming or something. And I'm finally getting a little better at it. And, why am I going to be an opera singer? No. But the joy and the ability to get yourself to a different level is so satisfying. And there's so much learning into that journey.
I think that's great on many levels, because I'm just thinking, here we are talking to you, the expert on creativity. You studied it in college. You wrote a book on it. You teach businesses how to be more creative. And you were courageous enough to go out and take on something you honestly fear, singing. And I think most of us, you certainly wouldn't want to hear me sing, but most of us would say the same thing. And you went out and you're willing to try that for an extended period of time just to practice what you preach. Am I hearing you correctly?
Exactly. And it's a mindset. It's like there's always something to learn. There's always yourself pushing out of your comfort zone. And innovation is about change. And so changing something in your personal life is also going to help you doing the same thing in your business and in your communities, because you see that it's feasible. You see what the journey on take. You see the up and the down and the self-doubt and all of that. And it's really powerful.
Helene, before we go further, again, I'd like to let our audience know you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Helene Cahen. Her last name is spelled Cahen. Her book is Fire Up Innovation, Sparking and Sustaining Innovation Teams. And Helene, we're going to ask you, is there a website where we can learn more?
Yes, it would be www.fireupinnovation.com.
Now, I always look in a book if there's a cool term or something that will make me sound smart. And I came across several in your book, but one of them, wicked problems. That sounds mysterious. It almost sounds like Mystery of the Week. What's a wicked problem and why should we know about it?
So the wicked problem comes from city planning. And the concept of wicked problem is that as you implement a solution, it's going to change the nature of the problem and something else might emerge. And I like the concept because it describes a lot of the changes. We're making changes and we're making the best decision we think at the time. But by making that decision, we're changing the future and therefore other problems will come up. And it's an idea that, unfortunately, innovation is not like one and done. Things keep evolving and you need to keep evolving as you go. And I would say in a way, you're almost in prototyping mode because even in business as usual is not going to be business as usual in the world that's changing. So what has been working for you for the past 5 years or 10 years is likely not going to work in the next 10 years unless you make some changes. So the idea that nothing's perfect. It's probability, it's trying, is failing, is learning, and keep doing it.
And if I read properly, I think you had a term, innovation isn't linear the way most things. If I want to go someplace, I go outside the door, I go into my car, I start it up, I think of the directions, and then I go to wherever my destination is. But it's more back and forth and kind of almost a gamesmanship. Is that a good description of it?
Yeah, and it's messy because we all want to say, okay, in 6 months, I'm going to get this thing that I want to get and launch in the market. And maybe it will happen, but likely it's like you try something and you test it and you know what? You consumer don't like it. Or you have this great thing, but then there's a manufacturing issue. Or there is something, so sometimes you have to go back one step. Sometimes you have to go back a couple of steps. Sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board because you totally fail. And that is really part of innovation. And one of the things I encourage people to think is instead of fearing failure, integrate failure, anticipate failure. It will happen. And then the question is, how can you make it early and cheaply so it doesn't kill your business? That's really the best challenge. And I ask our team that's why I really believe in early prototyping and testing, because that's the way to get it up. That's a way to get feedback. And that's a way to do it in a way that you haven't spent millions of dollars and a year or two to get something perfect.
You know, that either sounds like the title of a new book or a T-shirt, How to Fail Early and Cheaply. Honestly, that if I saw that in Barnes & Noble, I would have to take a look at it because I would be saying, why do I want to fail and why fail early and why fail? You know, it would catch my interest enough that I would have to look at it and, think about it a little bit.
I might steal your idea.
That's okay. I hope you do. But send me a T-shirt if you get one.
I will.
Now, when I get a problem, I call it let it simmer, like putting oil in a frying pan. And in many cases, I often felt, gee, the other people in the room are better than me because they're knocking out an answer in a few minutes or maybe 24 hours or whatever. And I seem to like to take a few days to do it. And then I felt better reading your book because I read something that we don't all solve problems the same way. So can you talk about that? Because now you're making me feel better.
Yeah, exactly. So I was talking about the different way of thinking when I was talking about the full part of the problem. What happened is we all have preference for those different phases of the creative process. So some of us have preferences for that, what's called clarifying, understanding a problem, asking questions, getting data, talking to people. Some of us have preferences for ideating, coming up with ideas, which we often think that's a creative person, but it's just one aspect of the creative process. Some people have preferences for developing. I was with people whose title is developer, and that's what they do. They take those ideas, they tinker, they play with it, they get feedback, they prototype it, they just play with it and get them to the next level. And then some of us has preference to just getting things done. those have preference for implementing, and acknowledging that we each have a preference for 1, 2, 3, or some people are neutral of those dimensions. And that's why you and I might work differently. And yet we're both creative, and yet we're both going to help to get to a better solution. And it's a different way of doing it. And some people need time to think, and some people think immediately. That's a little bit on the introvert extrovert part of who we are. And that's also why I love to use whiteboards in my work, because a whiteboard allows people to work asynchronously. So somebody might you might have a deal at 2:00 in the morning. You can put it on the board. You don't have to have it with your colleague in the room. Some people like to talk out loud. Some people just want to be quiet and write things down. So a whiteboard allows for all of those, and also give everybody a voice, whether they're introvert, extrovert. We put everything in writing, and we do it sometime at the same time. If we're in the room at the same time in the meeting, that's also save a lot of time.
And I'm guessing and hearing from what you're saying, it's probably a good idea if we're on a problem or looking to solve something worthwhile to either keep a pad or a tape recorder near us or something that can record ideas. Because when I get an idea, it kind of pops into my head. Then I'm hearing something on the radio or the TV, and all of a sudden it was, what was that great idea? I was going to change the world, and then I lost it. Do you recommend that to people, to write everything down?
I recommend people to use whatever works for them. So to your point, some people are more audio thinking. Obviously, you're in radio, so that's probably your
There you go. Okay.
Record it. For me, I'm a visual thinker, so that's why I would love to write it, and like the whiteboard with Post-it notes. That's how I think about it. So whatever way it is for you to remember, yes, notice it, because you never know when some thoughts come up, and they sometimes come up when we, in the shower or going for a run or some another place, and if you want to capture it, it's important.
You just read my mind, honestly, because those are the two places. I do a lot of walking every day and, of course, showering, and those are the two places where ideas seem to pop in. I always say to my wife, I don't know why I'm getting it when I'm out there or in the shower, but they do seem to induce ideas, so I'm going to stick with it. Ellen, this was a great show. I really love it. I want our audience to know the book is Fire Up Innovation. It's by our guest, Helene Cahen, Cahen. And Helene, we're going to ask you again, please give us the website before we wrap up.
Yes, that is www.fireupinnovation.com. And you can find my services. You can find more information about my book. Feel free to reach out if you have questions. I'd love to talk about this topic.
It's a fun book, and we'll get a lot of good ideas from it. I'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.